All right. So this is a panel sponsored by Planet Texas 2050. So the Energy Institute, we've been trying to do a lot more collaboration as much as possible. And Planet Texas 2050 is an amazing organization focused on energy and sustainability, and really excited to have this panel pulled together, looking at beautiful energy, public art for sustainable cities. And I'll introduce Jim Walker, the moderator, and let you introduce your panelists. But Jim Walker is director of the Office of Sustainability here at UT, and everyone in Austin seems to know you, Jim, everywhere I go. So take it away.
Thank you, Brian. And just picking up on the Planet Texas 2050 theme, I want to thank Heidi Schmalbach for pulling this panel together. And she does a great job at Planet Texas 2050. She's also on the Austin Arts Commission. She was at Arts Council New Orleans for 8 years. Prior to that, we're lucky to have her in town here. The Office of Sustainability collaborates quite a bit with Planet Texas 2050 in other events throughout the year, so we're overjoyed to be part of this panel as well. So I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then we're going to have a presentation and some thoughts, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So we're joined here. The Land Art Generator Initiative was founded in 2008 by Elizabeth Monoian and Robert Ferry to leverage the power of art and design to accelerate the global response to climate change. LAGI works with communities around the world to design public art installations that clearly generate renewable energy and water and provide other human support systems at a variety of scales. In 2019, the LAG archives were acquired by the Nevada Museum of Art Center for Art and the Environment. Elizabeth is an artist and strategist who works closely with international partners to address issues of climate and sustainability through the lens of creativity, including customized approaches to renewable energy installations. She's been published, she's exhibited and presented globally on the aesthetics of renewable energy and the role of art and design in providing solutions to climate change and the energy transition. She holds an MFA from Carnegie Mellon University and is a recipient of several global awards. Robert is a registered architect and lead AP professional with decades of professional practice experience on both consultant and client sides. He has worked as design manager and project manager on sustainable and urbanist developments across the United States and spent 4 years as a consultant on large commercial projects in Abu Dhabi, where his focus shifted to ways in which buildings can move beyond net zero and contribute to the energy needs of the surrounding cities. Constance White is currently, for 2 months, has been the arts manager at Austin International Airport, Bergstrom Airport. Prior to that, she led the Austin Art in Public Places program. She's a nationally recognized public art expert who's worked with public and private organizations in cities across the U.S., including the American Association of Airport Executives, Americans for the Arts, San Diego International Airport, DFW, the City of Chicago, and the Arts and Humanities Council, Montgomery County, Maryland. She has a 30-year career in this field. So this is going to be exciting. I'm not going to pretend to be an arts expert, but we, on campus here as the Sustainability Office, we see opportunities for the infrastructure conversations to integrate with the arts and with beautification and deepening the experience all the time. So I'm excited to hear the presentation and have the conversation. So I'm going to hand it over to you all, and there should be a clicker up at the podium.
And it worked.
Oh, there we go.
And mic's on and everything. I just want to thank Heidi, Texas 2050, and everybody for having us here and joining us this afternoon. I'm going to start off with a little bit of a history lesson to remind you all that energy and culture have been intertwined since civilization, maybe even before. But, you know, at the beginning of electrification, all of our power plants were located right in the hearts of our cities. And there's a great example at UT where you have your combined heat and power plant right in the heart of the campus. So it's kind of like a microcosm. The reason is that we couldn't raise the voltage yet high enough to transmit efficiently over long distances. So at that time, if you asked somebody on the street where their energy came from, they'd point to the power plant down the street. And they were designed like this beautiful one in Lisbon, Portugal, by architects to be beautiful contributions to cities and the cultural landscape. And as we were able to raise that voltage high and transmit across long distances, we moved those coal-fired power plants out of the hearts of our cities because no one wants to live next to a coal-fired power plant, although some still have to. But in that move, they kind of severed their connection to art, design, culture. And today, if you ask someone where their electricity comes from, you'll be hard-pressed to get an answer beyond the switch on the wall. And this disconnect between human culture and our energy systems is sort of a stumbling block in the energy transition. And as we build our new energy infrastructures, they are also being designed in a utilitarian fashion in most cases, which makes sense for a lot of locations where they're remote, rural, centralized energy infrastructure that is based on that model that we established in the early 20th century. But in some ways, the aesthetics of our energy infrastructure has been used as a tool for communicating a slowness, a not in my backyard reaction to these infrastructures. And so we want to think about how the last time we invested so much money into our energy infrastructure during the Works Progress Administration, the federal government employed 10,000 artists to actually literally gild the infrastructure of that era. And so we are the beneficiaries of that. And people go from Las Vegas to see the Hoover Dam, not because they're geeks about hydroelectricity, but because they want to see these beautiful Art Deco sculptures set against that beautiful desert landscape. And while they're there, they'll learn a little bit about hydroelectricity, which is awesome. And so now today, we have this opportunity again to create beautiful infrastructures, places for people that are creating and powering our cities, and that future generations can come and celebrate this important time in history when we pulled ourselves back from the brink of our own destruction and created a new clean energy landscape for us to benefit from.
So in 2008, Robert and I found ourselves living in Dubai, and we were thinking about all of the pinch points to the energy transition. And we thought, if one of those is the aesthetics of renewable energy, then why don't we think about bringing designers and artists and landscape architects and architects to work alongside engineers and scientists to reimagine our energy landscapes as works of public art. Since that time, we've put out several design competitions. In 2008, we thought, okay, we are an artist, designer, architect couple, and most definitely we could tackle this ourselves and start designing one-offs. But we thought the greater impact would be to put out a call to the world. And we did that. In 2010, we started our first design competition for 3 sites in the Emirates, 1 in Dubai and 2 in Abu Dhabi. And we couldn't believe our eyes when sometime in late May, when we closed that competition, that it asked for interdisciplinary teams to think about utilizing renewable energy technology as the medium for public artwork. And around 200 teams around the world answered that call. And we were so delighted to present that portfolio to Masdar in Abu Dhabi. And they said, okay, don't show anyone, hold tight, we are gonna put you front and center at the World Future Energy Summit, January 2011. And that propelled us and launched us to continue this model. And we're happy to say that we've worked around the world in a variety of site typologies, and we have a portfolio of over 1,500 ideas that really show that interdisciplinary and collaborative process can be one of the many solutions to the energy transition.
We're going to run through a couple of the projects that have come to our competitions over the years by energy technology. So on the screen you see a conventional solar module, but one of the things that we do with the land art generator is we really expand the imagination of what a photovoltaic module and other clean energy technologies can be, because especially with the building integrated photovoltaic revolution, solar panels can look like a lot of things, and so we're going to show you some of that. We're really excited to be building right now in Houston the first large-scale outcome of the land art generator competition. Bless you. And it's called The Arch of Time. It's by an artist, Ricardo Mariano. who is from Italy and works and lives in Berlin. It is a 350 kilowatt solar array, a community solar scale installation, but it is designed as a sculpture in public space, and it is also a timekeeping device that has 11 apertures in the top of the artwork that are aligned perfectly with the solar hour of every day. And so at each hour throughout 11 hours of the day, a beam of light will appear as performance in the center of this 25,000 square feet of shade. And it will move slowly across the ground plane so you can feel the earth spin and your place in the cosmos. And so at first glance, most people will just see this as a wonderfully engaging sculpture that plays with sunlight. But they will then come quickly to learn that it is a power plant that provides 400,000 kilowatt hours of energy, clean, free energy to the city grid every year. So we hope that y'all come visit this when this opens, probably around 2 years from now is our best guess, and we'll keep you updated on our progress as we move forward on this project. Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I think there are going to be questions as we go through the next few slides about the cost of these projects, and we want to pause and remind everyone of the economic impact of public art, and we know Constance can most definitely speak to this as she's chatting in a few minutes. But this is a project, it's not one of our projects. It's called New York City Waterfalls. It was up for 4 months in New York City, so that's a very short period of time for public artwork. It cost $15.5 million to install, which is on the high end of public art. But during those 4 months, brought in $53 million in incremental spending. So the question about economic impact of public art is something that cities study very carefully. And cities understand that this brings people to a place.
Yeah, and we're not competing with utility solar. We love utility solar and wind turbines and all of that, doing the cheapest kilowatt hour. And what we're doing is we're expanding the places that these infrastructures can go, because you can't just paper over a beautiful public plaza with conventional solar. You have to get more creative. But at the same time, it's important to remember that the more energy that we can bring into our population centers, the more resilient and reliable that electricity will be when it doesn't have to rely on one long-distance transmission line to bring that energy to the city. So we want to bring more energy into the city with distributed energy resources, but the more we want to do that beyond rooftops, we're going to have to start getting a little creative. And when we do that, it's really great that we have access to these new technologies. So you don't have to limit your creativity to that blue panel we looked at earlier. You can get on the market now, you can get a solar panel that's any color of the rainbow. You can even get these beautiful blingy golden solar panels, these polycrystalline modules you see there on the right. You can use special encapsulation technologies to have the face glass of the module look like any color, a solid color, or you can even print graphics on it, which we're going to show you a little later. So you can see that golden photovoltaic module in a custom form used to create a new photovoltaic sun for the city of Abu Dhabi, this beautiful arabesque sphere that powers 100 homes and is this wonderful work of art that celebrates the birth of the United Arab Emirates. This is by Antonio Macá. It has a very special place in our heart because it was the first project ever to be uploaded to our website in 2010. And Antonio Macá has entered every single Logi competition since then, so he's amazing. And every time he just blows it out of the park with his creativity. And this is really wonderful because it shows the relative position of the planets around the sun on the day the UAE was founded. Each one of the planets is also encased in special thin film solar technologies. That special face glass that I was talking about earlier is used on Light Up by a team from Melbourne that entered and won Logi 2018. And this creates a beautiful river of electricity flowing down from the roof of a hotel and creating a cap park over Jacob Boulevard at St. Kilda Triangle. And so all of those yellow ribbons that you see are actually monocrystalline silicon modules just kind of hidden behind that yellow face glass, which is designed specifically to allow the light through to create electricity, but from an angle appears that bright yellow color. You can also look into the next generation of thin film solar, organic PV, OPV, and dye-sensitized solar cells, which are really cool because they're all the colors of the rainbow again, but they're also semi-translucent and they're completely flexible. So they allow the imagination to go to places like Beyond the Wave by a team that entered Logi 2014. So all of those pink ribbons that you see are the actual solar technology, and this is a power plant where you can take your family for a picnic. Other kinds of solar technology, solar thermal, concentrated solar power, just like the big plants that you see in the Nevada and California desert. That technology can be used to create the solar hourglass by Santiago Muris Cortez, the winner of Logi 2014. And so on the top bulb of the hourglass, if you will, are heliostat mirrors that track the sun's position across the sky and focus its light onto a parabolic shaped mirror that creates a vertical beam of light that beams down to the salt collector and the turbine that's in the lower bulb of the hourglass. And you can walk up under that shade and you can touch that beam of light. Of course, it's protected by some thermal insulated glass so you don't burn yourself, but you can feel that heat through the glass and you can rebuild that connection between human culture and our energy systems. And you can be reminded that there's still time to avert the worst effects of climate change by this hourglass. And it's a beautiful, positive, inspiring message to help counteract the narrative of gloom and doom and climate apocalypse, which is very important to understand the science behind climate change, but not to get paralyzed by it, to know that there are dozens of proven technological pathways to a net zero future that can be one of energy abundance. It's not about sacrifice. If we can act together and act cooperatively, we can get there. Wind Nest is using wind energy technology, so this is a kinetic sculpture that moves to face the wind direction at all times of the day. And inside each one of those beautiful clouds is a turbine that is capturing concentrated wind as it moves through the cloud. The Venturi effect speeds the wind energy up as it passes the rotor. And so this is a smaller scale device, but you can imagine many of these working in concert to create a lot of electricity. Each one of these basically powers a home. So this is kind of the image, the public imagination of what community solar or solar on the outskirts of our cities looks like. And not that there's anything necessarily wrong with this, and certainly when you build this way, you're reducing the overall carbon intensity of our electricity grid, which is great. But in some ways, you might be doing a little bit of a disservice to the overall transition movement if this is the advertisement that we have up for what our energy transition will look like. And so, like I said before, this is really appropriate, and we want to get the cheapest kilowatt hour in the right places. But in other places that are cherished, we have an opportunity to do something even more amazing. And some of these examples on the screen now can show you the other end of that spectrum. I was talking about how that custom face glass can be used to do printed graphics, and so that allows us to initiate in 2017 the Logi Solar Mural installation program, where we work with communities, young people, local artists to co-design, storytell, create murals just like you would paint on the side of a wall, but now you can do those with solar panels. So these are going to be up for 30 years generating electricity for J.T. Brackenridge Elementary School and Mr. Vargas's 5th grade class that you can see there. They're so proud that they designed this, and so they'll tell their kids, and everyone in the neighborhood sees this is the advertisement for what the energy transition can be. And so this is potential for every mural program to do this kind of work.
That project is in San Antonio, by the way. The two lower, the La Monarca and the project with the students, both San Antonio. We love to work with young people. This is our Art and Energy Camp example that was over the course of 6 weeks. We worked with a group of kids aged 7 to 17. We took them on field trips. They went to a coal-fired plant, a nuclear plant, and then we offset that with sustainable installations, all in Western Pennsylvania, so that they could really understand the energy mix of the area that they lived in. And then over those 6 weeks, they designed and helped to build this installation. If we were to do this again, this was before our solar mural program, we would most definitely do a solar mural.
We're going to end on a little bit of a a reminder of the land use requirements for solar and renewable energy in general. So we do a lot of information graphics as a part of our educational outreach. And so this shows you that the land use requirements are, I don't know if oh yeah, look at that. So this green square here is the energy landscape. So it includes the spaces between the modules and the turbines. This yellow square is the actual technology footprint. And this pink square here is the amount of built up area of the world. So, you know, we can get there. It's going to be challenging. It's not something that we should be hiding, the fact that the land use intensity of our clean energy future. This is for a 100% renewable energy powered world that actually exceeds the primary energy of our existing economy, global economy today. So this is a future of energy abundance, but it's all renewable. And so it is possible, but it is going to take a lot of land. It is going to take some creative thinking about how we bring as much of the energy into that pink square as we can to get there. And of course, you may have seen this graphic. When people see that we have to cover Indiana with solar panels, that starts of, I don't know if we can do that, but
It's Indiana.
Indiana, right? It's okay.
But it really doesn't tell the whole story, because of course those are going to be distributed on rooftops and in over parking lots, and in there's many solutions. We can get there if we think about it in ways to actually protect. We don't want to be creating a zero-sum game between energy landscapes and rural landscapes for these uses that we see up here. So the more that we can bring it into our cities, again, the better, and the more we can ease that. You know, we're hearing about solar moratoriums in counties where people are just like, we don't want these competing with agriculture. There was a great agrivoltaic panel I hope you all were at yesterday, I believe. We didn't get to see that, but there are all sorts of creative solutions on that spectrum, from utilitarian to solar mural and everything in between.
Are we able to get off of our slide and back on to the, oh, no. I'll leave it there.
Well, thank you for that presentation, that overview of your work. I got several questions pop up there, but Constance, I want to ask you to share some of your thoughts on working in the public realm and with airports.
Wow. Well, tough act to follow, and how I'm always inspired to read about your work and to see all of the things that all of the ideas that you are introducing into the public consciousness about the possibilities of the aesthetics of the infrastructure within which that we live and the systems that we need to thrive. Artists work to the parameters within which is provided to them. So fiscal parameters, physical geographic parameters, and limitations on media that includes energy. And I'll say that the field of public art as a profession was formalized in the 50s, where cities prioritized hiring arts administrators to consider how artists could impact the built environment and infrastructure. And so the measure of time from where we started to where we are, there is incremental impact in how our municipalities have trusted artists to work at the intersections of infrastructure and energy and public art. But things are changing, obviously. So as Jim said, I've been at this airport for a couple of years, and there's a lot of dreaming that's happening. And I do have a little bit of a script here, so I'm just gonna read it, if you will bear with me, just to touch on my notes, and then I'll turn it back over to you. So I did mention that artists work at various intersections of societal issues. And in thinking about today and this specific topic, energy infrastructure and artists, usually the artists are brought in around three different, I want to say, themes or opportunities. One is an aesthetic solution. So there's a power plant or a fuel tank farm, for those of you who live here in Austin, and the neighbors or the city, nobody wants to see it. So hire an artist to create a mural, build a wall, build a screen so we don't have to look at it. But it really isn't an integrated solution. it becomes more or less of an appeasement for community relations, if you will, to put a thing in a place so we don't have to see the other thing, instead of thinking about the beauty of the infrastructure from the very beginning. There's also opportunities that allow artists to explore and to experiment. Usually, not many municipalities provide funding for that because it's risky, but you find those opportunities within residencies where artists are creating small-scale projects where they can kind of experiment with energy at the intersection of community and infrastructure. And for instance, a few years ago, 2016, I worked on an initiative for a smaller university in Dallas. You may have heard of it, Southern Methodist University. Happens to be my alma mater. They funded an initiative called New Cities, Future Ruins, and thinking about the Rust Belt and infrastructure and expansion and gentrification, and invited several artists internationally to think about energy and to think about land use and management. And it was just a really interesting opportunity to introduce to communities, to neighborhoods, that artists are working at this intersection of convergence of where energy is transitioning and can create these aesthetic impacts, so that when they think about a utility plant or these solar farms or even these cell towers that need to go in their neighborhoods, they don't always have to look like utility, right? There are other ways of doing that, but we have to take a risk to do that. And I want to say, like, maybe the last area of exploration is awareness building, which in my field, I've worked with a lot of artists that want to bring awareness to energy, to the infrastructure, to utility, and that was a big part of what I did in San Diego Airport. The airport is right on the harbor, right on the bay, and the giant kelp forest is there. And little do we know, like, there are a lot of, the kelp is harvested for ingredients that go into our cosmetics, into things that go onto our bodies, into binders that go into our food to make the shelf life last longer, and an ingredient in ice cream. And so the artists actually work with the North Oceanic Atmospheric Association, our weather people, to install some installations that are permanent around the airport, that are subtle, they're aesthetic, they are not the infrastructure, but they support the infrastructure, just to highlight or daylight some awareness about there's something right across the harbor that impacts your daily life. And so I think, again, as this being a really big research institute, invite artists to commingle with your researchers, your biologists, your scientists, your engineers, to imagine and dream about the future. So they're planting seeds in their capacities now, so that when these large opportunities from public art funders and commissioners become available, then they're already thinking about how can we partner to reduce the risk that there's an artist on board, but there's also like engineers and scientists on board as well. Biomimicry is one of these areas where artists are starting to look at how can we copy nature to impact our infrastructure and think, in a really pragmatic and aesthetic way as well. So I think that's a good place for me to stop.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's, those are, again, questions leap to mind. I want to pick up on one of the last things you said there about the importance of starting the conversation between art. And a lot of this is something that people can take away with into whatever realm they're working in. But it calls to mind here on the UT Austin campus, we have a public art program, Landmarks, and we have here in the room, and and there's an art installation that I cannot talk about, but which the conversation started about how does that public art investment start to meet one of the infrastructure needs of the project that it was associated to. Right now, it may evolve away from that, but like you're saying, start the initiating of that conversation at the outset is so important.
It's very important.
So what would, and this is for all of you, because I think a lot of your projects, your design competitions, those don't all necessarily get installed or built, but the conversation starts, and that can go anywhere, and that ripple effect continues out. So how would someone who's maybe not in that role or has that title, how would they go about kind of being that person that helps start a conversation of bringing an artist to the table, or having an engineer bring an artist to the table, or kind of launch a conversation?
There are myriad ways to launch the conversation. I think knowing who's in the room or knowing who's in the city, right? So knowing me, knowing my colleagues in the city who are responsible for creating these opportunities. We know about the funding. We know pretty much what other agencies around the country are, what opportunities that are coming available. But we also meet as a field. We meet as colleagues, and we talk and dream about the future. And some of us have more influence with our appointed and elected officials and the leaders of our cities than others. And so we are usually fairly advantageous in finding the folks to talk to say, hey, you know, there are moments where cities can have these really big impacts. And Austin is having a moment. And to capture the attention of leadership, to say, when there's cranes in the sky, you know a city is booming. And to say, have you thought about this? There's an example in Dallas, the Calatrava bridges. There's 2 bridges. And this was many years ago when I was a public art coordinator for the city of Dallas. There was a historic bridge that needed to be replaced. And they were speculating on cost and all of that. And the director of cultural affairs at the time introduced the city manager to Santiago Calatrava, who had an exhibit at the Meadows Museum on the campus of Southern Methodist University. And
It's still Texas.
I know, it's still Texas.
We're proud.
But the introduction of the architect artist to the city manager bloomed. And now we have 2 signature bridges, and they used part of the public art budget to fund the exploration and the design of the bridge, which seeded, you know, the opportunity for fundraising for everything else and the bonds of that. And so it's just those moments like awareness building and just, you know, taking an opportunity for the introductions to be thinking on a broader scale.
I want to say kudos to Heidi for organizing this panel, because I think it was risky for you, or perhaps for UT Energy Week. I can see that the room cleared out a bit because people I think there are a lot of folks who don't know how to make sense of this conversation. So I really do want to acknowledge that you took that risk. And I think it's an important risk. I think that there is not an energy transition without people. And there's not an energy transition without collaboration. And that collaboration has to be interdisciplinary. So every time someone takes a risk and invites a new group of people to the table, then it's happening. Then we know that the people are behind the energy transition. So I just want to acknowledge that you did that, and that we're up here, and that some people stuck around, but not everyone. And I think that speaks to the point that it's very necessary to keep having these conversations.
I think one of the things we want to do with our work is get folks to think about that vacant lot or that side of that building that they walk by every day with their dog, and now think of it as an energy landscape or a potential energy generation site, because now they've seen the opportunity and the possibilities to do that. And the energy transition will be most successful if it's something that we all do together, rather than if it's something that people perceive as being done to them. Things that people perceive being done to them always reach points of delay. And so we are really doing our part as artists, architect, to help accelerate the transition by bringing more people to the table and having people see that they have an ability to initiate projects. You know, if whoever the owner of that building is that you walk by that you see as a beautiful potential solar mural installation, you know, get in touch with them, start a project together for your community. We want everybody to be a part of this. You know, technology doesn't exist in a vacuum either. It's really born from human culture and reflects human culture. And so the deployment of the new technology will only be as successful as its popular embrace. And we're all voters. And the reason that we live in a system that's designed the way it is because it is policy implemented by folks we put into legislatures to enact those policies. And if we can get all of the public to have its imagination that we want to support the energy transition because it's going to materially improve our lives and make our cities more beautiful as they become more sustainable, then we can really help accelerate that new policy and that new system.
Thank you. So we'll do questions. I think the microphones are going to wander around or come on down, but raise your hand if you have a question. But I want to pull on something else. So we've talked over the last few days about the urgency of the energy transition. And you mentioned the agrivoltaics panel that happened yesterday. I'm also thinking about the EV panel that was earlier in the day yesterday, where Buzz talked about an EV has to function as a good car. It's a good car first. And we're very good, to your slide of the barbed wire around the utility scale solar, we're very good at making things functional. But then this next element is integration of beauty and of the arts. My question is, do you think that helps hasten or deepen the sense of urgency of the energy transition, or starts to have more acceptance of the kind of things that need to be done? I mean, I think with the agrivoltaics, they would say yes, and that more rural communities, would love to ask the Bandera Electric Cooperative if they would think that an artistic expression within their cooperative would hasten their other programs. So what have you found in that?
I'll start. I think, you know, we would love to think that the world will create a massive movement for change because we all care about the environment and species not going extinct and the climate maintaining pre-industrial carbon parts per million. But to be frank, that's not going to create change. What's going to create change is human desire. And when that EV is more fun to drive, has better acceleration, is everything that an ICE vehicle was, but more, that's when people are going to start buying them. And when the cost of powering that vehicle per mile is less than filling up your internal combustion engine vehicle, that's what's going to get people buying them. When you can tell a farmer that you can increase your revenue per acre by installing agrivoltaic onto your land while you're still maybe even increasing your yields because of the ability of the solar modules to partly shade species that don't particularly thrive in direct sunlight. Now you're getting the farmer to make a dollars and cents decision whether or not they even believe in the science of climate change. So we're basically, you know, we've captured 75% of the public because people really do want a better future and want to avoid climate apocalypse. But there's going to always be 25 to 30% of the public that is either getting different information sources and or just generally not interested in saving the world. So they're going to be doing they're going to be participating in the transition because we're going to plant a seed of desire in their mind that the transition is going to be really awesome, and so it really doesn't even matter. And I mean, we can also say that the air will be a lot less polluted too, so that's good.
No,
What,
please.
if you want to address that kind of, does beauty have a role with urgency?
Well, I like to use the Apple computer example, that there are many people who would argue that they're not necessarily better systems, Apple, but what they did is they made things gorgeous and sexy and desirable. So the Apple model for energy is where we would like to see a lot of the energy infrastructure that has to be in our urban landscapes.
I agree. There is a project here just off of I-35 at Mueller. I'm new to Austin, so you have to forgive my geographic reference. It was installed in 2009 by an artist couple, Max Harry's and Leosh Hader, and it's called Sunflowers, 15 Sunflowers, and they are solar receptors that are sculptural, designed by artists. And at the time, the Mueller development was undergoing, redevelopment as the former airport, and they are intended to offset some of the energy that light the parking lot. To my knowledge, they're still functional. They're bright blue, and they become a landmark as well for folks to see. But I think if Austin needed a prototype to look to for like form, function, and aesthetics with infrastructure, that's something to look at.
Great.
Yeah.
You have a question?
My question comes from the fact that a lot of people learn better with colors and with art, with visuals. And I was wondering, what are your thoughts on what we can do next to make, let's say, the land art or public art known to, like, what is the idea behind it that makes it sustainable and makes it and makes people aware of the importance of energy transition or energy conservation, and how do we incorporate art with education per se?
I'll start with the education angle, and then just in terms of the work we do, we wanted to do a very quick introduction to the Land Art Generator Initiative, but for every project we develop, there is a deep dive into educational resources, the development of and the distribution of. So for every competition, we develop educational materials that are relevant for that place, but also resonate nationally and internationally, and those are given out. We do always a limited edition of printed, but they're always available as free PDF downloads on our website. The other thing we see in our competitions, while we're not a student competition, we do see probably 30 to 35% of the submissions that come in are from university students, which we love. Because what's happening, what we've discovered, and now we make sure we align the competitions with the academic calendar, professors utilize our design brief and content for senior studio coursework. So we know that it really resonates for university students to be thinking in this interdisciplinary collaborative way. So yeah, just a quick note on that for us, education is core to the mission of our organization.
I'll just add that in 2016, we held our first youth challenge. So we have a subdomain, youth.landartgenerator.org, and we've modified it over the years, but it comes with a 13-step toolkit, which follows the design process, and it comes with lecture slides on all sorts of, color, pattern, design, composition, art outside the gallery, lessons in that history, and basically everything you need to design your own land art generator initiative or own land art generator installation. And so lots of high school students have participated in that over the years, and so we do we present to kids from grade 4 up, probably. One time we were presenting to a 5th grade class, and there's a project that was to Logi 2014 called Energy Duck, which we didn't show, but it's a really great example of STEAM education through these projects, because we put Energy Duck, which is basically a duck made out of solar panels, and it's also a gravity battery. It's a great way to capture the imagination of young people, and then be able to bring those lessons in science and technology through the art. Because this one kid, when we were giving that lecture, we put the Energy Duck on the screen, and he did one of these, and we said, "Oh yes," he said, "That is genius." We were like, "Yeah, you're right, that's genius." So I mean, the kids get it. We give basically the same lecture to 5th graders, and they just love it. And so we hope that it inspires them to go into careers in science, technology, and also weave art into that.
That's phenomenal.
Another question. You want to say?
Just really quickly, I'd like to say that the Austin Bergstrom International Airport takes energy very seriously and has a environmental affairs department, and I've been tasked on, how to think about educational initiatives with our adopted school district where we are at Del Valle. And so I have also reached out I've spoken on the campus to different student groups here about public art and infrastructure, and I would like to establish a relationship with some students to just dream and think about. There's a lot of opportunities that are coming up at the airport and things that I can't think about. But we are going to initiate like a school residency program. And this will be a multi-year program because school districts are huge. And I haven't worked it out, but I was just approved so that students could actually use the airport as a lab in thinking about, whatever the possibilities are, and have some artistic solution that's like a real opportunity that can be funded and built. But public art is not, it's standard, but it isn't standard from city to city, from program to program. And so a lot of educational initiatives that happen in one place may not happen in another place. But as you become more aware and as you live in different places, your arts administrators are usually fairly open to, having ideas seeded and being collaborative within the capacities that they can work.
Thank you. And I love you putting a pin in different people learn different ways, there's different modalities. And as the technical stuff gets sorted out towards efficiency and economics, I love that bringing the arts into it keeps it open to more people, having an entryway into it. So thank you for that question. Another question here?
Otto, okay. This is fascinating, and my question is related to that question. During South by Southwest, I met a Brazilian man who told me he had put 45 AR installations in Dubai, and I know of a couple of AR artworks in Texas.
Augmented reality.
Yes, a huge mural, historic mural that's got somehow connected with more information, and a Quanah Parker sculpture. And I am wondering if there's, that's energy intensive, so it might be contradictory to what you're doing, but I wonder if you know of any work that's fusing or using AR in connection with energy generation.
I'm sure they're out there. Nothing comes to mind, but now that you've talked about it, I really want to try and get some AR into one of our future solar mural projects. And yeah, it does, the technology, the computing, the servers that are required to run that do add to our demand load, so you're right about that. But I think that it's the value of it to engage the public is probably greater.
I think I'm now contractually obligated to say this is the year of AI at UT Austin. And so I think that's an interesting question for a university, for higher ed to kind of pick up, is how do you start marrying the innovation with the art and finding the golden threads to energy? Great question.
Thank you.
Another? Okay, look, this side of the room is killing it. They are, there's more population over here. I'm not seeing any hands.
I'm looking.
I mean, all right.
I'm looking.
No,
I
okay.
have one, but I'm
just saying, I
deferring
just
to
want to give that side of the room a chance. But
well, I love the energy generation side of things, but I was curious if there's any particular pieces that y'all have been involved in that involve conservation and avoiding energy use in the first place, and if we can reduce through public art. It seems like there's a huge opportunity there, whether it just be shade or something similar, if you have any good examples of that.
Yeah, I think we want the projects to provide social co-benefits, and any of those co-benefits that can be passive, that can be energy conserving, are valued even more highly. And in our educational outreach, we very much stress that the negawatt, the watt not used, is the most valuable for our energy transition. And I can't think of, information displaying real time so that people can have an understanding of consumption, whether it's electricity or water, just increases awareness. And there's a lot of great projects, not our projects, but a lot of great artwork that does that does through the visualization of things that are often invisible is a really important contribution to art in public space. So we definitely celebrate that, applaud that.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? All right, I'm gonna ask you, I'm a moderator privilege to ask a quick question here. So let's ask about political support. So I understand their Houston project actually spanned the mayoral election.
Sure did.
And it seems to me that the airport, it started with a strong local business, music. There was one main stage. I think when it started, there was art. But it really seems like the city has doubled down into that with more music, more art. And it's a whole new political regime now. So can you all speak to how does art contribute to a sustainability project or energy project or kind of a functional thing spanning political support? We just had a representative from the Treasury office here. Politics plays a role in all of our work continuing. We're in a, how do I say, period of political uncertainty. We're in Texas. So spanning political support is a necessary thing to think about. How does art help that?
On the municipal level, it definitely, if you have community support and the willpower to maintain a process and a program, then that communicates out to your appointed and elected officials. And so, we talked about the return on investment or the economic investment of the arts in general, and that level, the economic impact of that. And there are certainly leaner years for the arts sectors in general, and that's nationally. But I believe for Austin, because it is branded as the live music capital of the world, and it is known for, or there is an expectation for an edgy kind of cultural scene, a street art scene, that it would not be easily accepted or received if that was taken away. And so I think that as far as like supporting tourism and the residents of the city, because there's so much expectation and so much support, then there is an expectation for the appointed and elected officials to carry that through.
Okay, thank you.
We think that art appeals across all political spectrums. I mean, we all love arts. It's a glue politically that it's it's something that brings us together. So we would hope that support for the arts would be something that maintains, and art will always be there. We were saying back in the green room, there's this great quote by Barry Lord that art is what we do with excess energy beyond that which we require for our basic survival needs. So, and this is true going back to cave paintings. It was caloric energy at that time. We had a little more energy at the end of the day, so we made art. Now it's, the energy that lights this stage, if there's a theater performance, but that is energy. Energy and art have always been intertwined, will always be intertwined, and we will always have some excess energy, and we will use that to create art, no matter what the politics are around us.
Thank you. I think our last question, probably. Yeah.
This is kind of on the same line, but having experienced a community that public art, some of it was very controversial. Have any of the installations or work that you have done created a controversy? And how did you deal with that?
Nothing we've done nothing's come back to us as being controversial. We're happy to say that. Again, I think it really is it seems to speak to people of all ages, of all demographics. We have not encountered any pushback to this point of our 16 years running our organization.
Yes. Art is subjective and taste is subjective. As a little bit of a bureaucrat who's an artist also and an advocate of the arts, I rely on a strong process that is ethical and transparent. And I believe as long as we follow the process that has been received, that's been voted on, that was inclusive in creating that process, then whether your neighbor or your mayor or my executive director or whomever likes it or dislike it, if we follow the process, then the process is what maintains the foundation of trust for being able to do the next thing. And so we can't erode the process because of its subjection to someone else's opinion or taste. Now, times change, context of how we receive things change, and how we defend those objects that were created during other times. All of that is subjective, and it changes also. And so there are times where you have to review things on a case-by-case basis, depending on the context in those political moments. But by and large, in my career, if you have a hard and fast, like you have a process that receives public input and the public participates in that process, then if the artwork gets to the point where it's installed, then I'm defending the process.
I love that answer. Can I just add something? That's exactly spot on, Constance. Thank you so much for that answer. And that's really baked into the work we do, is that from the very beginning, when a city comes to us and asks us to come and do a project, we insist on community engagement in the upfront. We don't want to make any, we can't anticipate that a community wants us to be there. So first thing is we go and make sure the community wants us, and then we keep them within the process every step of the way. We include community, and that is critical for the successful. But it's also critical for the success of the energy transition, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you don't include community, projects don't get permitted, right? This is the same conversation, and I think that's the overlap and why we're on this stage today.
One of the most famous examples, and you bring it up because Richard Serra just passed away yesterday, I believe, or maybe the day before, but one of the greats of art of the 20th century into the 21st. But his tilted arc was actually ended up having to be removed because he didn't collaborate with community, and it ended up being an impediment to people's use of the space. That's just one example of how the process just wasn't done correctly. Yeah.
Well, please join me in thanking our panel today. And we'll